So Nietzsche, he says lots of things, right? Some people throw a bit of their personality after their bad arguments as if that might straighten their paths and turn them into right and good arguments, just as a man in a bowling alley after he has let go of the ball still tries to direct it with his gestures. So there has been times when you'll say something and it just blows everybody's mind and it's so obvious and true, and then there'll be just some fucking asshole, yeah, but I'm gonna say something now. I'm gonna have the last word. And like that makes any sense, right? If you got the last word, that somehow made you right. That didn't make you right if you have the last word. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And so it almost seems. I also heard this one quote that says, "If you have to say it, then it can be disagreed. If you have to say it, then therefore it could be negated." And so that's fucked up. That's just fucked up. If you have to say something that it's like human nature to say, well, since you said the war was wrong, and I'm gonna say, well, I think it's right. Oh, well, good point. I never thought about it like that. This cracked article is actually tremendous. The 5 things that adults do or something. It was a great article. A whole bunch of things. It covered a whole bunch of stuff, but just being the devil's advocate was one of them. 5 things that people say is being an adult, but really it's not. And it said being a devil's advocate. Well, I'm gonna be a devil's advocate. It's like I believe this one thing. Well, have you thought about the contrary opinion? Have you considered that? Yeah, I have considered that. Of course I have. So, I've heard this actually. Some people throw a bit of their personality after their bad arguments as if that might straighten their past and turn them into right and good arguments, just as a man in a bowling alley, after he has let go of the ball, still tries to direct it with his gestures. Yeah, I've seen people that do that. It's almost just like, oh yeah. Somebody was accusing me, you're married, aren't you? You're married, aren't you? And I didn't deny it just because it was kind of like, what the fuck? You're just accusing anything and everything that come out of the fucking book, out of the fucking woodwork when I've done nothing wrong. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I told the person I didn't want to be with them, and so they just started accusing the shit out of me. And really I just had to block them or whatever and say, hey, don't contact me no more. But that's the whole thing just reeks. The whole thing just reeks. But the idea was, I'm not married, but she wanted to sit there and say that I was, so therefore, she had nothing. She had nothing. And so she just wanted to throw some personality just to steer her fucking, anger and disapproval of the thing in her direction. And I don't know. In some respects, I liked the realness, but I didn't care for the fakeness. Hi, I'm so adorable and cute, like a little girl, and just give me everything. I let you touch me, and I'm so innocent and sweet, so give me the world. I need a partner right now, so, if women cannot be a partner to me, then I have to go it alone. Just be a cowboy it up. And it makes me think of the Tony Soprano quote, right? First you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women. And with money and power, yeah, women will come. And so if I'm needing just some company, just somebody to talk to or whatever, and not a partner, but more of a just an object of my affection, then that'll come when I become rich and powerful. But right now I'm the same as women. And so and actually they're getting better jobs or graduating on a higher level, so they're in many respects like on a higher plane than me. And if they don't understand that equality is like equal, then I have to and I used to say that I didn't mind it. It's rough, I guess, like, because sometimes I'll fall for somebody and they'd be like, oh, why did I fall for this person? Why did I do this? It's and I said that I didn't mind because frankly I think it just means that men have to be better. They got to be stronger, better, richer, faster, nicer, sweeter. They just got to be. They got to take it all in. they got to be badder, stronger, be like traditional men, but also, be loving and kind. And I don't hate that. I don't hate that. That's what Nietzsche is saying, to be a superman. And so, since this is the idea that I think that feminism has put men into, Nicki Minaj, I'll never hang out with a million ass nigga. It's, so I gotta be. If I want to get with I don't want to get with the Nicki Minaj. But if I did, if I wanted her to be the object of my affection, I'd have to be a millionaire, and she still probably wouldn't even love me. Then I think maybe she could love her son. Maybe if she had a boy, she could love. I don't know. People do their things, and if they get wildly successful, that's good for them. I can't hate people who are successful. Um, good for them, right? Good for them. They were able to come up and make something of themselves, and actually that should be quite inspiring. So yeah. This is a badass article. I think it's absolutely true that really the hope is we are the change we've been waiting for, and we need to stand up, and we need to have convictions, and we need to start pushing the Democratic Party either into a better form, or just start making shit up ourselves, because the current structure isn't working. This is one of my favorite quotes by Robert Kennedy. I actually misquotes Escalus, but I'm going to use Robert Kennedy's on the night MLK was shot. And really, he was just trying to quell the violence and the riots, and he was just kind of saying we need love and not hatred, but wisdom and compassion and a feeling of justice towards those who suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. And I don't know. I think actually the MLK being assassinated he could have been president, and he would have changed the world. MLK would have been such a great president, better than Barack Obama. He started a movement from the ground up. Black people didn't have any rights for 10 years. They had the militia was backing them, but the Reconstruction failed. The military occupation, waned. And the amendments, the Civil War amendments, they were passed in the law, but they were never enforced. And so eventually the experiment of Abraham Lincoln of having equal, black and whites be equal, had failed. And it stated with de facto slavery, even in the industrial age. Noam Chomsky said that that slavery was still around. And so, de facto slavery, regular slavery, wage slavery, however you want to put it. My Groups River ancestors got here in 1869, and slavery had been declared illegal. But I heard that they had some slaves. So how did that happen? But it also heard that they treated them nice. Okay, maybe that's true. That's what they say about Kentucky, right? It's a dark and bloody ground, but hey, there wasn't no Indians here. Yeah, there was slavery, but it was like benevolent slavery. Even our song, My Old Kentucky Home, was an old Negro spiritual talking about how, he's going to the slave plantations in the South where it was bad. And so he's idolizing, like, oh my, where the darkies are gay. So he was like sitting there idolizing and dreaming about the slavery that's in Kentucky that was so much more benevolent than it was, in the past. And this is all Noam Chomsky that I'm getting a lot of this stuff, but he's saying the truth. I'm a steward of history, and frankly, he's just kind of putting those pieces, and he's making these connections that I never even considered. He said black people's only had a few decades of freedom. They had a brief moment of freedom, right after the Civil War. And then, for the nadir era of race relations happened until about 1940s, 1950s. So that's disgusting. That's so fucking sickening. So there is a black history. There is a white American history in black, and it's separate. And it's gross. It's fucking ridiculous. Me identifying with the oppressed, that's why I read so much about black history, but it's also, I read about Native American history and women and gay rights, and there's a lot of, identity sort of politics where, every individual has their own experiences, but those traditionally have been the oppressed groups. But I'm oppressed. I'm oppressed myself. And I've always hated power, and I always thought that power was wrong. And, I guess me being confronted with having to stand up for myself and take care for myself, and I'm coming across some of these good articles, I've been discarding that. Maybe power behind goodness. Goodness ain't shit without power. What the fuck is goodness? The only thing the KKK was able to get away with the shit was because so-called good white people didn't do nothing about it. So if the good could get some power behind them, then they would actually start to achieve more by being, by being sort of idealistic. Well, yeah, crime and justice, all that's bad, but so is power, so I'm not going to do anything about it. It's almost irresponsible in some respects. Frederick Douglass talks about power, and so does Friedrich Nietzsche. So let's go with Friedrich Nietzsche here. So he, this is just a sort of a synopsis of the will to power. This is exactly what he believes, okay? So he says, before we begin, however, it should prove helpful to explain what Nietzsche's doctrine of the will to power actually is. A psychological presupposition of Nietzsche's is that humans are always attempting to inflict their wills upon others. Every action towards another individual stems from a deep down desire to bring that person under one's power in one way or another. Whether a person is given gifts, claiming to be in love with someone, giving someone praise, or physically harming someone, the psychological motive is the same, to exert one's will over others. This presupposition entails that all human beings are ultimately and exclusively egoistic by nature. So whether you're giving gifts, whether you're complimenting people, whether you're pretending to be nice or just being mean all the time, that was a big difference actually between me and Todd Rasman's fathers. Whereas his father was a dick kind of to everybody, so, big fucking surprise he was a dick in the house too, but he was a dick to everybody. But my old man was fucking pretending to be, hey, I'm this nice little boy and does all this stupid shit. And he's a dick, behind closed doors. And he was a bitch, he was a fucking skinny little fucking nerd. And therefore, according to Nietzsche, there are no truly altruistic actions. The will to power is not, however, limited to the psychology of human beings. So this is really good stuff, because most of my problems come out of weakness or obedience to motherfuckers that don't give a shit about me. And so I need power. And that even Frederick Douglass says that who's going to help a man up if as soon as you help him up, he's just going to hit his head right on the fucking curb again? No, that's not what you need. You need them to stand up and to keep standing up. So you want them to fight. People will defend you when you fight for yourself. If you can't even fight for yourself, how can you expect somebody else to fight for you? And so I think this is not a bad idea. I don't think there's anything really bad that comes out of Nietzsche. Now, compare the Schopenhauer's versus, I know I'm fucking his name up because I'm kind of insulting him a little bit, because Nietzsche's just such a powerhouse when it comes to philosophy. But Schopenhauer is just like, he talks about the will, and Hitler liked him, but nowhere in Mein Kampf did he talk about Nietzsche. He eventually tries to take Nietzsche as a symbol for himself, but very rarely did he talk about sort of what Nietzsche was doing. And I don't know, there's some things Nietzsche says that could be twisted out of context, but Nietzsche himself said that all anti-Semites should be shot. So he was an anti-Semite. He hated people who hated Jews, and he also was anti-German nationalism, which I thought were pretty wild things. So for Schopenhauer, let's see, the fundamental differences between the two are that the will is not concerned with power. It is blind striving, and it's unintelligent. So Schopenhauer is basically like a Buddhist. He's sitting there saying that because we have unlimited desires, that is the cause of all of our pain and misery. So we have to try to tamp that will down, or try to free our mind and meditate, so that way we're not so, chasing the will. Ideas and representations are the outward manifestations of the will, while the will itself is the inner nature or essence of the universe. This will, according to Schopenhauer, is never satisfied, taking the form of desires, aspirations, lust, and cravings in human beings. The unsatiable nature of the will makes a burden out of one's existence. Once one desire is satisfied, it merely gives rise to another, and then another, and so on. The will is thus the source of all of the evil and suffering in the world. These ideas lead Schopenhauer to adopt a life-denying view of the world, since it contains nothing but suffering and the burning and satisfying unrelenting desires. Nietzsche's will to power, on the other hand, is a life-affirming view, in that creatures affirm their instincts to acquire power and dominance, and the suffering is not seen as evil, but as a necessary part of existence, which is to be embraced. Lasting pleasure and satisfaction come about as a result of being able to live according to one's instinct, the ability to exert one will to power. So as Nietzsche concludes in the very last lines of The Will to Power, do you want a name for this world, a solution for all of its riddles? A light for you too, you best concealed, strongest, most intrepid, most midnightly men. The world is a will to power and nothing besides, and you yourself are also this will to power and nothing besides. And so coming from a sense of powerlessness, that just sounds so grand to me. That just sounds so great. And I've got I've got several other, I got a whole sort of a foundation of works and things that I've read that that I don't feel as though it's like it's not just about the power. When he told me to re-examine and reevaluate all of my morals, I was talking to this woman that basically had no fucking morals whatsoever. She didn't have any morals. She couldn't speak about them. She didn't talk about them. She had no moral core. And I think that's what differentiates me from most other people is that I got convictions. I have convictions, and I've had convictions for quite some time. It's just that I keep, people making me feel like I'm the fucking crazy one. So let's read some of these quotes so that way I can kind of, get through this. I don't hate this, but God, I cannot believe how long this document actually is, and I should just come up and read this stuff. There's how embarrassing for the pupil, or how embarrassing to the teacher if the pupil always needs to rely on the teacher. That's something that's pretty powerful. He also says that mankind cares more about picturesque gestures. They care more about the gesture than they actually do about the argument. And so, therefore, the gesture itself is actually more important than the fucking argument. You can say whatever the fuck and believe whatever the fuck you want to, but it's the action. It's sort of the symbolic, action. When you make a demonstration, and I understand that, actually. I remember this. I got a friend. It used to be a friend. I don't know. He don't talk to me much more anyways, but he made a demonstration. He had a protest where he had a doctor and, like, the economy was sick and all this other shit. And it was really a good little picture that he came up with. And it made me think about him actually a little bit more. It's like, oh, that's who he is. Whereas instead of just saying, he also had a badass quote about Tupac Katari. If you strike me down, I'll become millions. So if you kill me, I'll become millions. So whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. So that's anti-Hitler, right? If you gaze long enough into the abyss, the abyss will gaze back at you. So that's something that if you're sort of on the edge, if you're on, if you're in this no man's land where I feel isolated and alone and unique, wonderfully, beautifully unique. And so really, instead of sort of trying to find validation in some of these mediocre fucking fools, right? Because Nietzsche talks about how basically there's only a few great men. Ayn Rand talks about there's a few great men. Albert Einstein says that the something about the mediocre men will put violence on the great men. So that's, lots of our authors are sitting there talking about how there's only so many great people. Nietzsche also was talking about how people try to, they're embarrassed about their intelligence because they want to fit in, right? People want to fit in, so they don't want to seem like they're smarter or better than anybody. And I swear, I don't feel like I'm smarter than anybody. I just feel as though I put in more time and thought about this stuff and have worked through these things. And if anybody else would have put the time in and thought about these things and worked through them, them too would have got to the same point where I'm at. So personally, I don't feel like I'm any better than anybody else out here. And I think that's wonderful. That's so fucking great. That's another great thing. I'm not better than anybody except for those motherfuckers that think they're better than me. Then fuck you. All right, you ain't better than me. Anything, that's another good thing, I guess. I do have good confidence. Anything you can do, I can do too. And that's not even totally true. There's some people with physical feats of strength and shit like that. But in general, I feel like if a person can, an architect can draw up a building, if they can come up with some scientific experiment, if they can come up with the invention or some sort of new remedy for some evil, some disease that's been causing lots of harm for lots of people, then I'm able to do that too. There's nothing out here that I'm not able to do. Something else I like that Nietzsche said was that friendship is based upon shared joys, not shared sufferings. And so that I got to learn this type of stuff because I feel like a lot of times I reach out to people and when I talk about, fucking problems, they don't want to fucking hear about it. And I can understand that. In fact, I actually heard a quote that psychiatrists are more suicidal than their suicidal patients. When you sort of bask in, your fucking misery, then you kind of fucking bring everybody down to where the fuck you're at. And it's kind of like, no, I don't want to be taken down. I want to bring you up. And if I'm not able to bring you up, I don't know what we're doing here. So, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often enough and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. I swear, Frederick Douglass and Friedrich Nietzsche, they had to have liked each other's first names or something. They just seem to be right on point with each other. The privilege of owning yourself. Frederick Douglass talked about how whenever he thought about freedom, there was nothing else he could think of. Once you got freedom in your head, once you became educated and understood, that life could be better for you, and you don't have to be a slave or a brute or an animal, then how do you sit there and say, well, fuck it, I'm nobody, I'm gonna be right there in that position? I don't think you can. And actually, even working class people, wage slaves, can still retain dignity for themselves. Yeah, I gotta come here, I gotta do this job, but you don't have to stand and lord over me and be a dick to me. So if you try to be a dick to me, I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna say, fuck you being a dick to me. We love life not because we're used to living, but because we're used to loving. So that's something fascinating. We're not used to life, but we're used to loving. I love that. I love that. I love that. But people, there's my one friend said something about being afraid to live. And I wonder if there is something to that. And so, I don't know. I feel stronger. I feel better. Without music, life would be a mistake. Another great Nietzsche quote. It is not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. So there does need to be a good friendship amongst two people if a marriage is going to happen. So Nietzsche, even though they say he's like a woman hater, he's got a lot of really good ass fucking quotes for how men can be better men. And it's incredible some of the things he says. Actually, he even says like every woman has to have some sort of antipathy towards the man that wants to be with them. But like, why? And it's the will to power, right? You can't just submit to everything that they want. So you got to have some sort of barrier. On the mountains of truth, you can never climb in vain. Either you will reach a point higher up today, or you'll be training your powers so that you'll be able to climb higher tomorrow. So you can never climb in vain. As long as you go towards the mountain of truth, you'll never be able to, you'll keep on going. And so me discovering Nietzsche, and actually I'm coming back and I'm sort of hashing or rereading the things he says so that it becomes more embedded in me. I do feel like I'm getting higher and higher. I feel like I'm evolving a million times a minute. Hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torment of man. So actually it's almost like an illusion, right? Hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man. Well, maybe if I just have hope, then things will change. No, live life now. Live life now. Do what you want to do. Make money. Live life now. If you have hope, that means you're sort of accepting the shitty conditions that you're in. All things are subject to interpretation. Whichever interpretation prevails at a given time is a function of power and not truth. That's fucking fascinating. Those people are saying shit, slavery was okay for a long time. Massacring Native Americans was okay a long time. And it wasn't the truth. It was a function of power. Very much like the war, right? People, oh yeah, the war, blah, blah, blah. It's a function of power, not truth. And Malcolm X says the truth eventually, it stands up. Eventually, the truth is on the side of the oppressed. Thoughts are the shadows of our feelings, always darker, emptier, and simpler. Which is interesting. Thoughts are the shadows of our feelings, darker, emptier, and simpler. So thoughts aren't as powerful as your feelings. Your feelings and emotions are so much more stronger. When marrying, ask yourself this question. Do you believe that you'll be able to converse well with this person into your old age? Everything else in marriage is transitory. So can you talk to the person? Can you have good conversations with them? If you can't, if it's just some power play, if it's just some bullshitter, that's not going to be, you got to be able to talk to the person. The true man wants two things, danger and play. For that reason, he wants woman as the most dangerous plaything. So another good thing. I mean, he basically, Nietzsche is really, I think he's illuminating sort of what women are, and that way men are not to be surprised by it. He also said something else remarkable about women. Oh yeah, he said that in love and revenge, women are more cruel. So when I'm looking at the men and I say there's no morality there, if they're kissing their man's ass, they have to have a fucking lower morality than even the man does. They just think smiling and kissing their ass, they get whatever the fuck they want to. So what fucking morality does that come from? Where does that, right? Man says, shut up, do that, and she does it. Well, you don't have any morals because you're being obedient. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So if you have a why to live, why you live? Revolution, freedom, justice, union, solidarity. That's the reason. That's the why. And when you got a why, then you can bear almost any means in order to get that to that reason. So revolution, a constitutional convention. I got the why. I got my journey. And so I just got to get there. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. I've heard that so many times. A bear can kill you, right? So that doesn't exactly, it's not always true. If you get your legs chopped off, it doesn't make you stronger. But the idea is sort of, if you get robbed, if you get beat up, if you take the blows and you're still able to stand and keep going, then that does make you stronger. In fact, he'll defend criminals because criminals kind of point out where we're vulnerable. One must have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. That's another beautiful quote that I came across with Nietzsche. You got to have chaos. You got to have something churning inside yourself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. And so in some respects, people say, well, do you feel sorry for the man who had a good, happy life and has no cause or nothing else, just went through life, doing the things? Or do you have, do you have sympathy or empathy, or do you have, jealousy for the man that had hardships and has to overcome them and become something spectacular and great? And so, I mean, I don't know. It didn't have to be this hard. Edward Ligogamo, I don't know, some fucking comedian, Mario Liguizamo. He said something about, I was like, life is hard, but it doesn't have to be that hard. Like, shit. Have it your way. I am my way. As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it doesn't exist. You've got your way. I've got my way. You do you. I do me. Love is blind. Friendship closes its eyes. So there's something when you close your eyes, it's that much more passionate. Love is blind. So you love something that's a weakness. It can be fucking taken. But friendship, you cannot take friendship away. Friendship and good conversations, that's a true friendship. I also heard of this quote about friendship too. Is there's really no logic when it comes to friendship, love, marriage, any of this stuff. Really, you just kind of say, yeah, I'm going to pick this one and I'm going to fuck with this one. And then you do. And then hopefully the same person feels the same way towards you. In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. In individuals, insanity is rare, but in groups, parties, nations, and epochs, it is the rule. So in mobs, in nations, parties, groups, epochs, everybody's fucking insane. Now, I heard actually this one defense about being like an unempathetic psychopath. A psychopath has no anxiety and has no empathy for others. And somebody actually defended it, and they said that the psychopath is more evolved, and therefore that is the direction that we all need to become. I don't like the idea of saying a psychopath is a good thing, but there is something about sort of being stronger, not allowing shit to get to you. Now, if you see some crime or some injustice that happens, I feel like you got to stand up, because an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That's the great thing about being a revolutionary. You can see injustice anywhere you go. A woman may very well form a friendship with a man, but for this to endure, it must be assisted by a little physical antipathy, right? So he's saying man and woman could be friends, but for it to endure, she can't just be plowed over. And there is something to that. I agree with that. So much. And like I said before, like I want a partner. Right now I want a partner. And so really, I guess that's I'm ignoring the social roles that we had designed for ourselves. Fuck that shit. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like, woman, you on top, so share your power. That's where I'm at right now. For you to act like that I have to give you love just because you touch me, and that means you get all the power, and I just have to fucking chase and always be disappointed and sad. I don't like that. But perhaps I'm ignoring some fucking social, norms there. I even met a woman that even kind of agreed with some of the ideas I was speaking about like 5 years ago, and she says that she believes in equality, but not really. She thinks that equality can sort of form by however you negotiate. So in any which way that you negotiate. So therefore, if, the woman gets paid for a dinner or a dance or whatever, and then she has sex, or if there's some sort of give and take that way, she takes care of the house and is a homemaker or whatever, but fucks him whenever he wants, takes care of the kids, you know what I mean? Like, there's a give and take, and so that means an equality type of relationship can be negotiated, instead of it just being sort of like, hey, you're a human being, you're paying, taking care of your bills, paying for your own house, paying for your own car. Well, good, you're being a fucking adult. Well, that's a superwoman. That's a super fucking woman. So, I mean, her bragging about it, I can understand why she'd be bragging about it. In fact, I actually heard this one comedian that says, I'm all independent, made my own money, and I'm looking at this housewife dressed in slippers, and she's sitting there wandering around the supermarket, not giving a shit. And I'm thinking, what a genius. How was she able to, get what I achieved on my own by the sweat of my own brow and she just wandering around like all cute and not giving a fuck about shit. There is something very gangster like that. Bill Burr, man, Bill Burr is on it. Bill Burr, I fear for him a little bit, but Bill Burr, I feel like it's kind of making bringing manhood back, and manhood is a good thing. Manhood is a good thing, and so the he was sort of saying, I don't forget what I was talking about there, but he's got a lot of good points actually, just sort of and he's not a bad guy. Like, he'll read the letters and give good advice about people and say, hey, this is how. He actually says that you cannot be friends with a woman just by itself, because there's always that sex thing is going to come up. And so if she just wants you to be a teddy bear and be the example of what men can be, but if if you're not getting sex, then that means you're not really part of the, her love romance, and you're going to always be sad and depressed by that relationship. And so there's something to some of the things that Bill Burr says. Lots of things actually that Bill Burr says. And I don't think he's a bad person. I think he's actually a really good person. I do fear for him a little bit because I think he's a fucking psycho, and I think he's got some trauma that his old man did to him, and he hasn't really come to terms with it. And I think he's even defended it in some respects. So, I don't know. Yeah, so anyways, the essence of all beautiful art, all great art is gratitude. So, hey, thanks for that art. That's beautiful. All truly great thoughts are conceived by walking. Frederick Douglass said something about he started praying with his legs. That's when his prayers were answered. In heaven, all the interesting people are missing. That's a Mark Twain thing, right? All the cool people are in hell. Fucking heaven's just a bunch of what? Bastard fucking, boring-ass Bible thumpers. There are horrible people who, instead of solving a problem, tangle it up and make it harder to solve for anyone who wants to deal with it. Whoever does not know how to hit the nail on the head should be asked not to hit it at all. Oh, that's such a good one. Hit the nail on the head. Say exactly what the fuck you mean. Say exactly what the fuck the problem is. Don't beat around the bush. This is the situation. This is the fucking thing that needs to happen. Hit the nail on the head. Nip it in the bud. In attempting to counteract the predicted rise of nihilism, he was engaged in a positive program to reaffirm life, and so he called for a radical naturalistic rethinking of the nature of human existence, knowledge, and morality. On either interpretation, it is agreed that he suggested a plan for becoming what one is, through the cultivation of instincts and various cognitive faculties, a plan that requires constant struggle with one's psychological and intellectual inheritances. So Nietzsche's talking about he's a powerhouse, the will power. That's all it is. That's all that everything matters. But eventually, when he had a mental breakdown, there's a man beating his horse, and he ran out and he goes, "I understand you." And then he fucking broke down right after that, and then lived in a fucking mental house. So I wonder if sometimes the will to power could just be too excruciating that people I hear even strong men want to be smacked around and shit in their sexual escapades, and women, I hear that they want to be strong and independent, that they just want to be dominated over. It's kind of like, well, which one is it, Master or slave, master or slave. Let's be equalist. Can anybody agree on that? Can I get an amen for equality? Amen. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so his attempts to unmask the motives that underlie traditional Western religion, morality, and philosophy deeply affected generations of theologians, philosophers, psychologists, poets, novelists, and playwrights. He thought through the consequences of the triumph of the Enlightenment secularism expressed in his observation that God is dead, in a way that determined the agenda for many of Europe's most celebrated intellectuals after his death. Although he was an ardent foe of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and power politics, his name was later invoked by fascists to advance the very things he loathed. Okay, so he says the consequences of the triumph of the Enlightenment secularism expressed in his observation, God's dead, that he was saying, let's go to the next level, right? We're enlightened. We think we know about science and scientific progress. What's the next level? Let's go there. There's actually a book that was just like a dystopian novel written by a Russian, but the idea was that if you had a nice, rigid, scientifically, sort of rigid society, that there's still issues that maybe you wouldn't have seen from before. We're not robots. We're not fucking, you can't just put a man into a fucking machine and say, do this. You can. That's what we do. But really, you gotta take the whole man. You gotta take the whole human. Their ability to come up with language, their creativity, their whole aura, their whole fucking experience, a holistic approach. So, when you come up with jobs, it's not like, hey, Just pick this thing up over and over again and do that thing. And it could be something like that. That makes me think about P.T. Barnum. P.T. Barnum would try to just get people to come to his shows by doing these weird-ass fucking demonstrations. And these weird-ass demonstrations would just be with them picking shit up over and over again. Why the fuck is he doing this? And he never explained it, never told anybody. He's just like lining bricks up, about 20 of them, taking one from the end, putting it to the other end, and he just kept doing it. It made no sense. But that was the point. It was this, it created buzz, and then people say, well, shit, we need to figure out what the fuck is going on. And then eventually he would have a really high turnout rate. So, you know, you mentioned about what it is. So if you're part of that plan, I can understand that, you know, that's not just sort of being on an assembly line, being a fucking, you know, a machine or whatever. Tortured, endures, and knows how to turn to its advantages. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently. That's interesting. So, hold high in esteem someone they have not considered before. So that's, I don't know, I guess Mitch McConnell guy isn't that bad. He was all about Machiavelli. That was his man, right? And there's some Machiavelli. It's all power politics, right? So Machiavelli is coming into what Nietzsche was saying. And then there's Robert Greene, right? The rules to power. And so if the will to power is all that matters, then that just means, you know, we got to deal with that. That's a truth we just got to deal with. I think William Glasser says we check each other and we say, hey, you know, I'm free. I'm going to do what I want to do. And through love and kindness, we kind of can work through it out, you know, with communication. Faith is not wanting to know what is true. Oh, I got faith. Nah, God's up there. I don't care what the truth is. Fuck off. Fuck you. I like my mental illness. It gives me comfort. I don't have to think about the hard problems of the world. I don't have to worry about where we came from. I don't have to think about any of that shit, right? I already know, and I don't want to fucking think no more. So, you know, stop thinking. It is impossible to suffer without making someone suffer for it. Every complaint already contains revenge, which is fascinating. When someone says, hey, that person did something, there is a fucking tinge of revenge in that. And so there is something to that, right? Women, they make the highs higher and the lows more frequent. So that's fascinating. He says women make life, you know, worth living, but then they also fucking make it more shitty, you know, more frequently. There's an innocence and admiration that's found in those to whom it has never occurred that they too might be admired someday. So there's an innocence and admiration. Wow, look at that person. That person is so great. And there's a lot of people, man. There's actually the Liberty's Kids was saying, looking for a person to idolize. And I think I got incredible heroes. I have so many fucking great people that I've learned and studied about, and I would love to be them. So there is admiration, but he's saying there's an innocence in it because it never occurred to me that I could be admired one day myself. And so, you know, I do feel like I've gone to that level now. Instead of sort of admiring people and putting them on a pedestal, I'm actually thinking, heck, I'm just like these people. I mean, there's no difference between what they're doing and what I'm doing, except for they're getting exposure and I'm not. They're successful at what they do. And really, I don't know, just getting out there and doing your thing. Many are stubborn in pursuit of the path they have chosen, few in pursuit of the goal. So they want to stick to the path, but they don't care about the goal, which is fucking interesting, right? No, I got the path. I want to stay on the path. But if you stay on, you know, train tracks without making a decision, you'll get run over. If you stay in the hallway without choosing the door, you'll never fucking live life. So therefore, get the goal. The goal is the fucking point. It is not when truth is dirty, but when it is shallow that the lover of knowledge is reluctant to step into its waters. It is not when truth is dirty, but when it's shallow that the lover of knowledge is reluctant to step into its waters. No, I don't know. Your truth is very fucking shallow. It's a little dirty truth. All right, I can understand that. But shallow truth? No, that's too fucking myopic. It's too... And that's good. You know, I heard that this one man went to rescue a woman who was like drowning. And he dove into the waters and it was shallow and he broke his neck. And even though his neck was broken, he was able to somehow get the woman out of the fucking water and wind up dying himself. This is Kentucky. This shit happened in Kentucky. Our treasure lies in the beehive of our knowledge. We are perpetually on the way thither, being by nature winged insects and honey gatherers of the mind. Our treasure lies in the beehive. of knowledge. We are perpetually on the way thither, being by nature winged insects and honey gatherers of the mind. So just knowledge is good. Is man one of God's blunders, or is God one of man's blunders? That's cute, cute and a little creative, right? Casual stroll through the lunatic asylum shows that faith does not prove anything. The doer alone learneth, so experience. That's the only way you'll do anything, is by experiences. Those who cannot understand how to put their thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of debate. You can't just speak out whatever the fuck you're saying. You know, you gotta basically still put on the fucking show. Say what the fuck next fucking thing is. You can't just fucking say whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Whenever other people are talking, I got all these other thoughts that's racing. I can't interrupt and just keep on fucking talking over them. I got to be able to say some fucking badass shit, right? For that motherfucker that says, sometimes I'll just have to repeat myself, right? For that motherfucker says, well, there's a quote there's this badass, somebody said mind blown. Because I had a badass quote. And somebody was sitting there saying, love it or leave it, America, love it or leave it. And I said that I love, you know, I clean my house not because I hate it. I clean my house because I love it. And their mind was blown, and that's absolutely fucking true. Love it or leave it. Well, I can just love my house. Oh, I love my house just as it is. I'm not going to improve it, not do anything to make it better. So who gives a shit? I love it or leave it, motherfuckers. No. No, you can improve it and make it better. And that's because you love it. And so he said his mind was blown. I got somebody was shitting on Abby Martin's page, and I defended her with that little nugget of you know, succinct, quotable, little succinct, little quotable, you know, succinctly quoted. All right, whatever. You know the two words I'm trying to say. You know. Close the program, man. I hate that thing. It always pops up and says it's going to do stuff. The thing, whatever. Okay, so it's good to express a thing twice at the onset so as to give it a right foot and also a left one. Truth can surely stand on one leg, but with two, it'll be able to walk and get around. God, that's so fucking good. God, that's such a fucking badass quote. So it's almost saying, repeat yourself, right? You clean your house because you love it. You don't just love your house just for the fuck of loving it. That's not patriotic. Hey, I love this pigsty. And if you complain about the dirty dishes, get out. Love it or leave it, motherfucker. No. You can do the dishes. You organize your house. You plant some fucking, you know, plants and shit because you fucking love it. Not because you hate it. Not love it or leave it. Improve it or leave it. Do it better or leave it. Don't be just some dumb fuck, you know, piece of shit that just says, hey, that's the way it is and that's the way it's always going to be and that's just how it is. Ha ha ha. No. You gotta be like Raylan Givens. There's always some madness in love, but there's also always some reason. It's just cute. I like that quote. It's good to express a thing twice right at the onset so as to give it a right foot and also a left one. Truth can surely stand on one leg, but with two it'll be able to walk and get around. Perhaps I best know why it is man who laughs. He alone suffers so deeply that he had to invent laughter. Sometimes the truth can be so fucking horrible that you just laugh. You know, I've had people do that shit. I said something about how Muhammad Ali says that's how he jokes around, just telling the truth. And so I guess telling the truth, there's some fucking, it's kind of fucking hilarious. It's like, goddamn, I've never thought of it like that. And then when you put it like that, it's like, huh, that's so fucking true. I was talking about the racism around here, and it made the lady, a lady I was talking to just laugh. She just fucking laughed. And it's like, well, it's not really funny. But it was like, she was so true that, you know, she couldn't fucking get past it. And then I said something about if racism was everywhere, and then she was like sexual racism. And so she was kind of saying homosexuality was like acceptable. She called it sexual racism, which I thought was fascinating. There's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest philosophy. Oh my God. I love that. Your body is smarter than your brain. Your body, the earth, and your brain is a part of your body too. But your language, he even said something about how the emotions, you know, are not as fucking as like poignant. Your thoughts aren't as poignant as your emotions. Your emotions are so much more deeper, and your body is so much, you know, that much more real than your deepest philosophy. The aphorism in which I am the first master among Germans are the forms of eternity. My ambition is to say in 10 sentences what everyone else says in a book. what everyone else doesn't say in a book. Exactly. Hit the nail on the fucking head, right? You're writing a book. Don't wait to the end to say the point. Give your point right in the fucking beginning. And then just, just climaxing over and over again. Hit the nail on the head. Build the fucking house. Don't wait till the end to say, oh, and you should always hit the nail on the head. I think that's how I did with actually some of my rap songs. I'd wait till the end. We should consider every day lost on which we have not danced at least once. So we got to dance sometime. Always dance. We should call every truth false which is not accompanied by at least one laugh. Okay. This then explains the central role that music played in his philosophy. Nietzsche, a talented pianist and occasional composer, had great hopes that Richard Wagner's music might somehow serve as the foundation for a refounding of German culture on the basis of a unifying art. For that reason, he entered eagerly into the circle of Wagner and his wife, Cosima. But he broke with the composer not because he ceased to believe in the project, but because he felt Wagner himself was too crude an individual to implement it. So, I guess Wagner's a piece of shit, right? What a bastard. Nietzsche begins by arguing that in the modern world, societies as a whole tell us a great deal more about the nature of mankind as will to power than do individuals. So, that, when you look at states, when you look at societies, you do see that they just want the power. They just want to do something. Mobs get out of control because they got together. Let's do something. Why get together and not do something? And so he kind of says that they're crazy. They just have to do something. The will to power. Bam. States act in ways towards each other for which individuals do not have the strength or courage because states do not feel responsible for their actions as do individuals. War, murder, and things. The state can do this type of shit and they don't, it doesn't fall upon the individual. They're the representative. They represent Kentucky. So as a Kentucky representative, we're going to declare a war on Tennessee. And that's just what Kentucky does. The will to power. The external behavior of the state is that of conquest and war, acting in accordance with the will to power. The state is able to engage in this behavior by dividing up the labor and executive powers among its individuals so that no one individual can feel as though one bears significant responsibility for the state's actions. It instills in its people values such as obedience, duty, and patriotism, while it outwardly exudes values such as strength, pride, and revenge. The former values are instilled by the state's overpowering of the individual so that one is compelled to serve in its interest. Jared Loughner's, he was like big into fucking Nietzsche, and so there all these authors had to defend it. No. Nietzsche is not like Loughner. He's not like Hitler. He's got all these other things. And actually I'd be prone to believe it. I don't give a fuck about the criminal activities, but there is just the idea of standing up for oneself, asserting for oneself. The Superman, you can create great art, you can write a great article, you can write great philosophy, create great scientific inventions. There's just so many things. Be a great engineer, great lawyer, great doctor, great farmer, great whatever the fuck you want to be. So be a Superman in whatever fucking field. We all could be leaders in our own fields. I see an entire army of individual leaders. That's what I see that's happening. I think there's a middle ground between communism and capitalism. I see a middle ground. Give everybody a plot of ground. That's not communism. It's not capitalism. Everybody got a plot of ground to do as the fuck as they please, to be the best citizen that they want in the agrarian society. It's fucking genius. Faced with a choice between real people and some stupid abstraction about words themselves, mere abstractions, Loughner killed the people to defend the abstraction. This then really is a kind of nihilism, only not the kind that people think Nietzsche was guilty of. It's the kind of nihilism that Nietzsche was trying to warn us about and help us overcome. By actual neighbor, I take Nietzsche to be referring to bordering states or societies as the context would indicate. It seems then that Nietzsche is trying to say that violence inherent in the way a society exerts its will to power is evident that the true nature of man is one of violence also. What Nietzsche reveals about the nature of states in these passages is interestingly similar to some of the political views which Noam Chomsky has professed, that states are fundamentally violent institutions, and a state's internally espoused values have no bearing whatsoever on its external behavior. The state, it has a monopoly on violence. I've heard that fucking argument from, a democracy fucking professor who loved being a dictator, didn't give a fuck about democracy. Therefore, in this respect, all truly great men, according to Nietzsche, are criminals in some respect. Now, pay attention to this, okay? So, get past, he's not defending criminality, but I think he's defending sort of You have to be able to defend against criminals. So when I was looking in Louisville and the motherfucker was trying to come at me, you know, I never felt more alive and terrified in my fucking life. And he fucking did. He came in like 4 o'clock as I was fucking leaving. He just fucking got a good chance. And then when I saw him, I spun around. You know, he wasn't there. Left. He had taken every fucking thing. So he fucking, you know, lied in wait and got it from me. So having a lack of friends, having no weapons, having no cameras, I was fucked. I had nobody. Called the police. They shrugged their shoulders. We knew where the guy was. We knew who fucking did it. The police did not give a shit. They ain't protecting and serving me. They give me $30,000 for walking to the store and medical bills, right? Beat the shit out of me for nothing, for no fucking reason whatsoever. And so they're more likely, you know, the state is a violent institution. They're more likely to put violence on people, not because they're criminals or bad people, but because they allow themselves to be bullied. And so if you're not strong enough, go back to Frederick Douglass, you know, why pick a man up if he's just going to fall right back on his fucking face again? So let's talk about what he says about criminals. In that they are individuals who are courageous enough to act in a way that goes against the conformity of the herd. So they're courageous because they're different. They're different than how the herd, the sheeple, right? Those who follow the good shepherd are sheeple. They go against that conformity. Nietzsche expresses this sentiment. He says, crime belongs to the concept revolt against the social order. One does not punish a rebel. One suppresses him. And rebel is just, you know, it's not, Confederates fucking try to take that shit. But rebel is just to rebel. There's an authority figure. You rebel against the authority figure. And then in order to stop the rebel from winning, you suppress him. And you do it with violence, right? So a rebel could be a miserable and contemptible man. It could be a criminal. But there's nothing contemptible in a revolt as such. And to be a rebel in view of contemporary society does not in itself lower the value of a man. And in some respects, this makes me think of the John Dillinger or some of your bank robbers out there, right? That doesn't take the value of him away. Fuck the banks. He fucking did something. He was a man. He took his fucking, you know, his life into his own hands, and he done something to bring about change in his own life. The bankers fucking rob everybody. I'm not saying it's good. It's not good to rob a bank or rob anybody. I think stealing is wrong. But if bankers are thieves themselves and the man is down on his luck, has nothing to do, what the fuck other choice has he got? He could, you know, blow his fucking brains out, but that doesn't help him. His life ends right there. So he stood up. He stood up and said, I'm going to do something, you know. And I think there is something moral about like taking when you need bread, taking from corporations or bankers or people that have just way too fucking much versus somebody, you know, taking from your neighbor, taking from, you know, the rabble or a fucking homeless guy or some shit. There is no fucking, you know, when Curtis... Motherfucker, Curtis, that piece of shit, that was his fucking name. We'll just go with Curtis. He's the one that robbed me in Louisville. Him and like 4 other fucking people in different other places. But he would go out and bum cigarettes from fucking homeless people. And then he made fun of fucking homeless people. And they thought it was so funny because he was such a dick to homeless people, right? He asked a homeless person for a sandwich. And then he was like, no, I gave him a sandwich. He's a lying piece of shit. And, you know... and in a way, I feel as though I allowed him to dominate over me. I allowed that motherfucker to dominate, and he kept on fucking pressing and thought I was a chump bitch, and then eventually fucking robbed me. And, you know, and he taught me a lesson that I am a chump fucking bitch, and people started treating me fucking like dicks afterwards. And so really, that's just, you know, he taught me something about myself. Not only the camera thing, lack of friends, and lack of weapons, but sort of lack of strength in my own body and my own strength and my own manhood, you know, the ability to not be able to say no, you know, just shit like that. So he showed me something to myself. I'm not defending his criminality, but a rebel, you know, a Lenin, a Castro, a, I don't know, the Chile fucking leader in 73, the Bolivian fucking leader, Evo Morales. There's something to be said about those types of folks, you know. They took a stand, and people recognize that they took a stand, and it didn't take away from their manhood. It didn't take away from what is their essence of what is them. Now, if you rape a motherfucker, if you rob him, if you beat him up and take his shit, then you're taking away his manhood, right? So the bank robber, he takes away the manhood of the one who owns the bank, but not his own. Oh, the criminal takes away the manhood of somebody else, but not their own. And it's a weird fucking. I'm not defending criminality because I got a strong moral core. I hate murders. I hate thieves. I hate violence, and I hate raping. And so I think if you can be a child abuser, if you can hit somebody that you love, then I don't think you believe in any of the other things. Really, I think that the way Americans are, they have no morals. If they can get away with their fucking bullshit, they'll smile and pretend that they're nice and good little Christian boys and girls. But they'll do as the fuck as they please. And if they can get away with it, then fuck off, right? If Walmart can fucking sell the cheapest fucking goods from China, fuck off. If King Cole can pollute fucking streams and creeks and nobody stands up to them, fuck off. And so these people teach us sort of about the threshold of what human beings will fucking take and take and take, especially if they have no pride and dignity in themselves, if they weren't loved and nurtured as they should have been when they were younger. There are even cases in which one might have to honor a rebel because he finds something in our society against which war ought to be waged. He awakens us from our slumber. The criminal is thus someone to be valued by a society as Nietzsche would have it, instead of looked upon with moral derision. The criminal points out something about society that is in need of change, helping to jolt the rest of us out of our complacency. The concept of punishment for criminals then simply amounts to the suppression of a revolt, in that it is nothing more than an attempt to maintain the mediocre status quo of the herd by imprisoning or in some cases executing those who deviate from it. So, now I fuck the criminals, but when I think about revolutionary heroes, right? George Washington could have been executed because he was revolting. You had Nat Turner, you had O'Connell in Ireland, you have, William Wallace. There's just so many fucking people that have, stood up and overcame. MLK got the Civil Rights Act, but he did get shot, but he got the Civil Rights Act. So he was able to stand up. He went up to LBJ, said, let's get this shit changed. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do it. So he went to Selma. And I gotta watch that fucking movie. I heard that movie's badass. So when I think about these revolutionary heroes, scientific revolutions too, right? Einstein, Max Planck, even Nietzsche. Where the fuck, how come I'm going through all this education and this is the first time that I came across Nietzsche? Nobody talked about Nietzsche. Like I had to come across Nietzsche on my own. I almost feel like education, like the school of education, teacher training schools, fuck that. That's not education. They are not, there's no democracy, no talking, no dialogue, no experiences. It's sit and get. I preach, you do as the fuck as I tell you. And Nietzsche never comes up. Dialogue never happens. Relationships aren't created. It's just fucking static and boring and stupid. Whereas Facebook, there's a relationship and there's knowledge and information. I could scroll through Facebook just on a fucking given day and learn so much new shit that's happening. News, scientific progress, interesting, fun little pictures, beauty, jokes. There's a lot of things that I can get. And so I have been, taking clips of just the news pieces that I get just to show that this is what's going through my mind. This is what is going through my mind, this day. This is the day. On this day, I thought about these 200 images. I thought these 200 images were of some interest that I captured it. I don't I don't capture all the stuff I just like. Sometimes people are like so fucking evil or some crazy shit that I gotta fucking capture. I'm like, wow, that is unique. And he's saying that the criminal as well as the revolutionary, because they don't go, they're not consistent with the fucking herd, they must be suppressed. I remember actually something about, I said I want to raise pecan trees at the extension office. And there's one woman that really liked me. The other woman was like a real shithead. It was like, what, you're not going to raise just fucking tobacco and tomatoes like everybody else? If everybody else is raising that stuff, then that means I'm going to fucking, we're going to flood the fucking market and we're not going to make anything. So by raising the stuff we want to raise, since there is no pecan market, I'm going to blow the pecan market off of its fucking face around here, right? Nietzsche argues further that finding a punishment which will cause as much suffering as the suffering inflicted by the criminal is impossible, since every criminal experiences different degrees of pain and pleasure. Being that it is not possible to measure these degrees, how are we supposed to determine a punishment for such a person which would be fitting for the nature of the crime? Nietzsche suggests here is the institution of punishment thus fails to do what it sets out to do, and that it cannot possibly provide punishments which offer the same amount of pain to the criminal as the crime did to its victim. All this seems to suggest to Nietzsche that punishment as a practice should be abolished, but at the same time he laments that it'd be a great loss. By this statement, it is likely he means it would be a loss of the pleasure one gets in being able to inflict suffering on those who have wronged one, as he discovers on the Genealogy of Morals, second essay, section 5. That's all, man. That's so fucking powerful. So okay, so Curtis fucking stole my shit, right? You know, he ruined my fucking life. You know, I'm trying to fucking do teacher training and shit. He got me all fucking razzled and shit, and so I'm like nervous and fucking now, you know. One thing led to another, and then eventually I lost everything. And he didn't give a shit. He got like $500 from my property. I can't do a media business. I can't, you know, I couldn't do the fucking school and shit. And so if I didn't have a fucking angel, you know, out there for me, then you know, I would not be surviving. I would not live. And so, you know, good thing for me having an angel. But that could have ruined me. That could have totally fucked me over. So I think there's a limit to what Nietzsche is saying, very much so. Because now I got time to get stronger and get better. So when that motherfucker comes, you know, so I can have the friends and the weapons, and I can have the strength, the brute strength, and also the camera. So I got evidence. So I would have all the things that could fucking get that motherfucker. If I couldn't get him myself, then, you know, I could get somebody, a cop, to believe my fucking shit happened. Your dream doesn't have an expiration date. Take a deep breath and try again. Faith is not wanting to know what is true. Here's something about, you know, the punishment. In ancient Rome, creditors were able to inflict painful punishments on their dilatory debtors in the form of removing body parts. They were legally given free rein to cut off as much as they felt would satisfy their loss. In the case of a society's penal code, the relationship between creditor and debtor can be put in terms in which the debtor is someone who owes a debt to society, and the only amount of suffering which seems fitting for the crime will suffice as payment. Overall, however, Nietzsche sees the criminalization of those who go against the grain as simply the herd keeping the people down to their level through the use of the state. As he states in page 746, I guess, such people should not be locked up but allowed to roam free, since they would help us break out of our shared mediocrity. So by him defending criminality, by him telling us to live dangerously, to fight in armies, and to do all these, you know, manly type of things, it does seem like a Hitler could pop out of this shit. But I also think, you know, an Albert Einstein or a Michael Jordan, I could see lots of things that comes out of, you know, what Nietzsche says. So Nietzsche is fascinating to be studied in his own right, in his own Reich. Right. So Schopenhauer wanted rascals to be castrated and silly geese to be shut up in the convents. From what point of view would this be desirable? The rascal has this advantage over many other men, that he is not mediocre, and the fool has this advantage over us, that he does not suffer at the sight of mediocrity. It would be more desirable that the gulf should be made wider, so rascality and folly should increase. In this way, human nature would be expanded. But after all, this is dictated by necessity. It does not depend on whether we desire it or not. Folly, rascality increase. And that is a part of progress. So the fool, fuck the fools, fuck the weak, fuck the silly geeses. We want more rascals, more strength, more sort of that type of stuff. And again, I think you could be strong without being a criminal. So, you know, this is how I'm interpreting it, right? So I'm taking from Nietzsche sort of what he is actually fucking saying. Because he's a psycho, right? I heard he fucking loved his sister and shit, like, too much. And then he also he had a mental breakdown, right? He had a big-ass mental breakdown. So if he's so fucking smart and knew what the fuck was going on, why did he just fucking lose his mind? What helps to maintain such mediocrity among individuals is the present type of society or state in which most societies presently function. Nietzsche highly disapproves of any society which is operated on the premise of equal rights and or universal suffrage, or in other words, any society in which the majority maintains power over one way or another. Socialism, democracy, and anarchism all rest on the idea that there are no great or superior individuals. And therefore, Nietzsche rejects them all. These forms of society, and I like all those things, democracy, socialism, anarchy. So I'm a Nietzsche, you know, a social, democratic, anarchist Nietzscheite. These forms of society represent nothing more than the rule of the herd, the rule of mediocrity. But if you have a society of supermen, then we're not mediocre. Nietzsche rejects such forms of society in favor of the aristocratic ideal, which values a higher form of man, a model for society which does, in fact, demonstrate a belief in great and talented individuals and an elite class. For here the herd does not have any power, and therefore does not keep in check those who stand out among them who deserve rank and recognition, or in other words, individuals are free to act upon their will to power in the natural ways. Nietzsche takes it to be a fundamental error to place the goal of society in the masses and not in the individual, as democracy and socialism do. Rather, in Nietzsche's opinion, the masses are the means to an end. He also considers it a mistake to treat sympathy as the most valuable trait in human beings, because he clearly states in section 7 of the Antichrist, pity asks for the multiplication of suffering. I take Nietzsche to be using pity and sympathy interchangeably enough. Pity makes us weak as individuals, sapping us of our ability to exert our will to power in the natural, instinctive ways that we normally would. It helps foster the herd by guilting us into helping to preserve those who would otherwise perish of their weakness and life-denying attitudes. The most redeeming quality of humans is, of course, their instinctive will to power. Nietzsche writes about this nature of humans in the form of its ego. The Christian resolution is to find the world ugly and bad, has made the world ugly and bad, because they defend their weakness and mediocrity. Anything that would go to change it, they fucking squash it before it gets a chance to do it. Fanatics are picturesque. Mankind would rather see gestures than reasons, than listen to reasons. I already said that. There is not enough love and goodness in the world to permit giving any of it away to imaginary beings. That's absolute. There is not enough love and goodness in the world to be giving it to some fucking imaginary motherfucker. God, that's such a good quote. I think I'm gonna cut it off here. So there's not enough love and goodness in the world to permit giving any of it away to imaginary beings.